What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Gooner channel. It's so close now. The Premier League is almost upon us. 8 o'clock on Friday night, treble winning Manchester City travel to Turf Moor to take on newly promoted Burnley, but with Vincent Kompany at the helm. It's a banana skin, isn't it? Potentially a banana skin. Isn't this their Brentford? Pep Guardiola said during the run-up to the Community Shield that they were still 2 weeks away from being ready. This won't have been 2 weeks quite yet, so are they ready? And I think that might be an absolutely brilliant game to watch if you're hoping Man City don't sweep all before them and win 4 Premier Leagues in a row. Which takes me to the main thrust of this video. I'm also running out of time to predict or to place my Premier League predictions. So without further ado, don't you hate it when people say that? Just say it, right? Anyway, so in 7th place is one of the teams that brought me the most joy last season. It was Chelsea. Chaotic, ridiculous at times, and slapstick. From an owner that came in and started buying every player under the sun, to a falling out with a really accomplished manager and a replacing of him with a totally inexperienced one who was out of his depth almost immediately, and then replacing him with Frank Lampard, who'd only just been sacked by Everton for doing so badly at management. It just felt, at one point, it honestly felt like they might be relegated. And I dared to dream briefly, and, you know, I am disappointed, but it's clear that they're not going to be as bad this season as they were last season. Their transfer business, the outgoing players, that has been really well done. They are a much leaner squad now. Arguably, though, too lean, and they're weak in the midfield. So, taking everything into account, a new manager is going to take time to settle in. A squad that's still getting to know each other. New additions in there that we don't yet know how they're going to perform. Transfer business that's stalled a little bit in bringing in players like Caicedo that they need to. They need 2 or 3 more signings in the midfield. I know that the transfer window goes to the end of August. Sorry, I know that the transfer window is later than the start of the season. So there's always a bit of time to adjust, but they need to be getting business done. All things considered, achieving European football from where they are now would be an achievement and would allow Pochettino further time. But I've got my doubts about him long term. I don't see a proven winner in there. And so, all things considered, 7th for Chelsea. In 6th, Newcastle United. I think they've been really sensible in the transfer window, and that might be their downfall. They are backed by huge amounts of money, but they're desperate not to fall foul of fair play. They are on an upward trajectory. Eddie Howe is a project builder, somebody who builds every part of the club in the right direction and may or may not be the man to take them over that finishing line. He hasn't yet won big, and their disappointing performance at the end of last season and in the League Cup, there's a question mark. I think that they haven't improved quite enough over last season to push on, and I think some of the clubs around them will have kicked on from where they were, and that'll push them down to 6th, which will be a disappointment. Might see a change in manager. But in 5th place, and a lot of people are talking about this team as dark horses because they do seem to have had a really good transfer window on the surface of it. I'm talking, of course, about Aston Villa, who have Unai Emery, who we all know, who has been very successful in Europe, just didn't work out for him at Arsenal. Some will disagree. Some will say he wasn't given long enough. I'm not sure Aston Villa is a sort of club that you could say traditionally gives managers long enough. Hopefully, they will give him time, but there will be some bumps along the way. Aston Villa's first team squad is pretty decent, but there are gaps in the second 11, and so the squad depth isn't quite where it needs to be. Although the signings of Moussa Diaby, who could set the Premier League alight next season, Yuri Tielemans, who still has a lot to offer, I'm sure, and you add to that Pau Torres, a titan at the back. Now, there's a good Tifo video on whether he might make them worse. I suggest you watch it. I will try and put a link in the description. But raised some very interesting questions about Aston Villa's vulnerability, not having strong enough headers at the back. I think for them, 5th place would be a really good finish. It might be just outside of what they're hoping for, but let's say they have a really good cup run. Surely that's the kind of progress that you want to see from a team that was really starting to languish before Unai Emery came in and gave them this little injection. Of course, Unai hasn't been at the club for very long, so that does affect the chances. It's unusual for a manager to come in his first season, take a team to the Premier League title from 5th or 6th. That's just not realistic. So I don't think Aston Villa are really title charging or top four, but I do think there's another season of progress, and I'm really excited by some of their players. Now, in fourth in the Champions League spots, although I know that there may be 5 Champions League spots, coefficient, blah, 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 but let's say the fourth is usually a Champions League spot, and in 2023-24, fourth place will be occupied by Liverpool, who will finally come back into the Champions League, but not quite deliver on the hoped-for title challenge. Jurgen Klopp is a fantastic manager. He's the second best manager in the league at the moment. He has pedigree. He's won everything that you can win at Liverpool. Last man to win the Bundesliga who isn't at Bayern. And he's the last man to win the Premier League who isn't City manager. So he has some pedigree, past and present. Last season fell apart. One of the explanations for that I've seen, which is really interesting, is that his high-intensity, high-pressing style tends to burn players out. Now, the exodus of players from Liverpool this transfer window may have been organised and orchestrated by Liverpool, but it has not been adequately filled yet. There doesn't seem to be anything like the squad depth that is required for a title challenge. The first 11 is quite obviously good enough to give anyone a run on their day, but there are players who need to refine form, and there are new players that have to be brought in, and that is a process. I think it's going to affect their title challenge this season. Liverpool fourth. In third, and it is by a whisker, the second and third place in my table, really almost too close to call, I would say. But I've opted for Manchester United. Now, Manchester United, for me, have had a decent transfer window. I think they overspent on Rasmus Højlund, but they really did need a player, and this is a Ten Hag style player. He's got the team he wants. He has complained a little bit that he hasn't got enough money to spend and he can't go after the big names. Clearly, Harry Kane would have made a big difference to Manchester United. That's everybody feels that way. But they have gone for Rasmus Højlund for not much less money, and he has only ever scored 9 goals in Serie A. He looks really good. He's very mobile, very versatile. But the other issues around Manchester United for me are the ownership. That's going to play a part. But also Bruno Fernandes as the captain. I think for me, that's a real roadblock to me believing in this Manchester United side. When I look through that team and I think of what they're missing, it was very much like the Arsenal teams of the last decade. We've missed real leadership, real drive. And I honestly think that that's what they've got. Now, Ten Hag, for me, I think, has been given everything he needs. It's unclear I don't know how Ten Hag feels at this point in time with the idea that new owners might come in. He may already have spoken to prospective owners and they may already have told him that his job is safe, but he may be unsure. He may be stressed and tense. He may not be getting all the players he wants. He may not be, but, they have done some really good business, and Harry Maguire's left now as well. So they're thinning the squad in a way that makes sense. But Manchester United, for me, they have an aberration or two in them, like we saw with a 7-0 last season, and I think that they will stutter a little bit and fail to recover. And I can actually see Bruno not being the captain at the start of next season. I think something, like I put my Mystic Mega hat on, something is going to happen. He's going to lose his temper or something. So for me, Manchester United don't quite have the right character to be champions. And now, with only 2 teams remaining, rather predictable teams, but who have I made second? Yeah, I have. I've made Manchester City second. I'm not going to have surprised any of you. There's a great deal of science that went into just picking this. I didn't just decide that I want Arsenal to win. I think there are some really good reasons why Arsenal are going to finish higher than Manchester City. First and foremost, if you look at the criteria, squad. Yes, Manchester City's first team is better than ours, but Arsenal's second team, especially if you bring in David Raya, that is a really strong second team compared to last season. It has enough space. There are so many versatile players in the Arsenal setup that we really don't have too many positions of weakness. If we do, it's on the right wing, but we have players who can play there. Man City, by contrast, have a real situation down the right-hand side of their pitch. Because yes, Bernardo Silva looks like he's extending. I think that's great. But De Bruyne could have another injury-prone season. And Cole Palmer, who was originally going to go off on loan, had such a good Community Shield that he might now be staying. But could you really make Man City favourites if Cole Palmer's starting? They're out there apparently looking to sign Mitoma. There are other players I think will come in. City do have the luxury of knowing they have easily the best first team. Well, not easily the best first team, but definitely the best first team, even missing Gundogan. Kovacic, it's unclear how he's going to play. So having that good a first team may take you to January, where if you need to bring in players, you can do. And you are still going to be held to ransom. But there is a big issue around Man City. And the big issue for me is Pep Guardiola. He's only got 2 more years. So here's my thinking. Can you really give him hundreds of millions of pounds over the next few transfer windows to build a team that he won't see come through to fruition? Are they going to start insisting that he either signs an extension or won't be getting the transfer funds? And if that happens and Pep says, well, I've done everything I wanted to do, this wasn't meant to be the rest of my life, I'm leaving. A Man City without Pep Guardiola, I think, is really going to struggle to mount a title challenge. And I don't think that's a controversial statement. Arsenal, on the other hand, their transfer window has brought in strength in depth that they were missing. There is a larger squad. It offers more tactical opportunities. He can play with a double pivot now with 5 fullbacks to choose from. Although there are resurfacing rumours that Kieran Tierney may be leaving. But when you look at Arsenal, we have a manager who's been at the club for long enough now to really start to kick on. He's had some success. He's won a trophy. He's just won a Community Shield. That's a big deal, by the way. You know, it's been 30 years since Tottenham won one of those. So please don't belittle that. It's upsetting them. We also won, don't like to brag about it, but we did win the Emirates Cup as well. No, anyway, I'm joking, but success, if you measure it in terms of league improvement, the title challenge last season, the overall points performance steadily improving and then meteorically improving last season, is enough reason to feel that he's successful or has a successful plan. He's had a great transfer window and he has a great first and second 11. This is the best chance Arsenal are going to have. Having brought all to mind and considered everything, all the little details, and having given this a lot of time and thought, maybe too much, my league winners next season are Arsenal. My neck's on the line. You can all laugh at me if I'm wrong, but all bow before my majestic powers of prognosis if I am correct. Listen, thank you so much for watching this far. If you have done, be rude not to quickly hit subscribe if you haven't already. And likes are important. I like you and you should like me back. Anyway, until I see you again, be lucky and lots of love.